The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink as it cast its final glow over the sprawling city. Just beyond the urban sprawl lay a private airstrip, a place reserved for the elite, a symbol of wealth and power. At the center of this world stood Mr. Charles Anderson, a self-made millionaire whose name was synonymous with success. Known for his sharp mind, luxurious lifestyle, and groundbreaking innovations in technology, Mr. Anderson commanded respect wherever he went. His prized possession, a state-of-the-art private jet that gleamed under the hangar lights, a testament to his achievements and ambition. For most people, Mr. Anderson was an untouchable figure, someone they admired from afar but never dared to approach. Yet, for one young boy named Ethan Carter, the millionaire's jet wasn't just a distant dream. It was a source of endless fascination. Ethan was only 12 years old, with unruly brown hair and a knack for noticing details others often missed. He lived in a modest house a few miles from the airstrip, close enough to watch planes take off and land every day. To him, there was something magical about the roar of engines slicing through the air, the way a plane seemed to defy gravity and soar into the unknown. Ethan's love for airplanes wasn't just a passing hobby. It was a passion that consumed him. He spent hours reading books about aviation history, studying how planes worked, and sketching designs for aircraft he hoped to build someday. His room was filled with model planes hanging from the ceiling, each one meticulously assembled and painted. From his bedroom window, he could see the hangar where Mr. Anderson's jet was kept, its polished surface catching the sunlight like a beacon. It reminded him of all the possibilities waiting in the skies above. Despite his admiration for Mr. Anderson, Ethan had never met the man personally. The millionaire was always surrounded by bodyguards and assistants, making him seem almost larger than life. Still, Ethan felt a strange connection to him through their shared love of flight. Little did he know this connection would soon lead to something far greater and far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. What started as a simple curiosity about airplanes would soon thrust Ethan into a high-stakes situation where bravery and quick thinking would be his only allies. It was one of those unusually quiet evenings when the world seemed to hold its breath. Ethan had just finished dinner with his family, but his mind was elsewhere. Earlier that day, while riding his bike past the airstrip, he'd noticed something strange. Two shadowy figures had been moving around Mr. Anderson's plane late in the afternoon, long after most workers had left for the day. At first, Ethan thought nothing of it. Perhaps they were maintenance crew finishing up some last-minute repairs. But as he pedaled closer, he realized something wasn't right. The men weren't wearing uniforms or carrying any official equipment. They moved quickly, glancing over their shoulders as if afraid of being caught. One of them held a small flashlight, its beam flickering across the underside of the plane. Ethan slowed down, watching from a safe distance, his curiosity piqued. When the men finally disappeared into the hangar, Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. Something about their behavior didn't sit well with him. That night, unable to shake the image from his mind, Ethan decided to investigate further. His parents were engrossed in a TV show, giving him the perfect opportunity to slip out unnoticed. Grabbing his flashlight and pulling on his favorite hoodie, he tiptoed out of the house, his heart racing with both excitement and fear. The air was cool and smelled faintly of fuel and freshly cut grass as Ethan made his way toward the hangar. He stayed low, using shadows and crates stacked near the building to conceal himself. Peering through the narrow gaps between the crates, he could see inside the hangar. The sight made his stomach churn. Tools were scattered across the floor, their metal surfaces glinting under the dim light. A toolbox lay open, its contents spilling out haphazardly. Worse still, one of the panels on the underside of the plane had been removed, exposing a tangled mess of wires. Kneeling beside the plane was a man dressed in dark clothes, his face obscured by the brim of a cap. In his hands, he held a pair of pliers, which he used to twist and snip at the exposed wiring. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't routine maintenance, it was sabotage. Someone was deliberately tampering with the plane, and if it flew tomorrow, there was no telling what might happen. Ethan's mind raced. Should he call the police? Would they even believe a kid like him? Or should he try to warn Mr. Anderson directly? As much as he wanted to act, fear rooted him to the spot. What if the saboteurs saw him? What if they came after him next? The man worked silently, his movements precise and deliberate. After a few minutes, he stood up, wiped his hands on a rag, and slipped away into the shadows, leaving the hangar eerily silent. Ethan waited until he was sure the coast was clear before creeping closer. His eyes darted around, searching for anything else suspicious. That's when he noticed something lying on the ground. A small piece of wire, bent and twisted unnaturally. It looked out of place, almost like evidence. Without thinking, Ethan picked it up and stuffed it into his pocket. Back home, Ethan paced his room, clutching the wire tightly in his hand. His mind replayed the scene over and over again, each detail sharper than the last. He knew he couldn't ignore what he'd seen. If someone flew that plane tomorrow, it could crash. Lives would be lost, including Mr. Anderson's. Determined to act, Ethan grabbed his phone and opened the camera app. Scrolling through the photos he'd secretly taken earlier, he realized they might be his only proof. The images were grainy but clear enough to show the tampered panel and the scattered tools. With trembling fingers, Ethan typed out an anonymous note, describing everything he'd witnessed and urging Mr. Anderson to inspect his plane immediately. Before he lost his nerve, Ethan sneaked back to the hangar and slid the note under the door. As he hurried home, his heart pounded in his chest. He had done all he could, but would it be enough? Ethan barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he pictured the sabotaged plane and the mysterious man tampering with its wires. What if Mr. Anderson didn't find the note in time? What if the plane took off as scheduled, only to meet disaster mid-flight? The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his young shoulders. He had done what he thought was right, but now all he could do was wait and hope. The next morning, Ethan woke up early, his stomach churning with nerves. He dressed quickly and told his parents he was going for a bike ride, though his real destination was the airstrip. As he pedaled toward the hangar, his mind raced with questions. Had Mr. Anderson seen the note? Would he take it seriously? Or would he dismiss it as a prank? When Ethan arrived, he saw something that made his heart leap. Mr. Anderson himself was standing outside the hangar, holding the crumpled note in one hand and looking around with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, the millionaire cut an imposing figure, but there was also a hint of vulnerability in his expression. A man who had just been warned about a potential threat to his life. Ethan hesitated, unsure whether to approach him. But before he could decide, Mr. Anderson spotted him. "You?" he said, pointing at Ethan. His tone wasn't harsh, but it carried an authority that made Ethan freeze. "Did you leave this?" Ethan swallowed hard, his palms sweaty against the handlebars of his bike. I saw something weird last night," he stammered, stepping forward nervously. "Someone was messing with your plane." Mr. Anderson raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "Go on." Summoning his courage, Ethan launched into an explanation. He described everything he'd witnessed. The shadowy figures, the scattered tools, the exposed wires, and the man fiddling with the plane's systems. To prove he wasn't making it up, he pulled out his phone and showed Mr. Anderson the photos he'd taken. Though grainy, the images were undeniable proof. Someone had tampered with the aircraft. For a moment, Mr. Anderson said nothing. He studied the photos carefully, his brow furrowed in concentration. Then, without warning, he turned to one of his security guards standing nearby and barked an order. "Get the team in here, now." Within minutes, a group of experts arrived, armed with toolkits and diagnostic equipment. They began inspecting the plane, their movements swift and methodical. Ethan watched anxiously from a distance, his heart pounding as they examined the exposed panel and tested the wiring. After what felt like an eternity, one of the technicians turned to Mr. Anderson with a grim expression. "Sir, critical systems have been compromised," the technician said. "If this plane had taken off, it likely would have failed mid-flight." A heavy silence fell over the hangar. Mr. Anderson turned to Ethan, his expression softening. "You saved my life," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you." Ethan blinked, startled by the sincerity in Mr. Anderson's words. I just wanted to help," he mumbled, feeling a mix of pride and relief wash over him. But the ordeal wasn't over yet. Mr. Anderson motioned for Ethan to follow him into a nearby office. Once inside, he gestured for the boy to sit down. "Tell me everything," he said firmly. "Start from the beginning." Taking a deep breath, Ethan recounted the events of the previous evening in greater detail. He described how he'd noticed the suspicious activity while biking past the airstrip, how he'd sneaked back later to investigate, and how he'd written the anonymous note after seeing the extent of the damage. Throughout the conversation, Mr. Anderson listened intently, occasionally jotting notes or asking clarifying questions. "You're very observant," Mr. Anderson remarked when Ethan finished speaking. "Most adults wouldn't have noticed anything amiss, let alone acted on it." "I've always loved planes," Ethan admitted shyly. "I guess I know what to look for." Mr. Anderson nodded thoughtfully. "Well, your knowledge may have just saved more than my life. If the sabotage had gone unnoticed, dozens of people on board could have been killed." Ethan felt a lump rise in his throat. He hadn't considered the broader implications until now. The realization that his actions might have prevented a tragedy left him both humbled and overwhelmed. Before dismissing him, Mr. Anderson promised to keep Ethan updated on the investigation. "You've earned my trust," he said earnestly, "and I won't forget what you've done here today." As Ethan rode home, his mind buzzed with excitement and disbelief. He had warned a millionaire, uncovered a dangerous plot, and potentially saved countless lives, all before breakfast. Yet, despite the enormity of what he'd accomplished, one question lingered in his mind. Who would want to harm Mr. Anderson, and why? The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity for both Mr. Anderson and Ethan. News of the sabotage spread quickly among the millionaire's inner circle, prompting an immediate and thorough investigation. Security teams combed through every inch of the hangar, collecting fingerprints, reviewing surveillance footage, and interviewing staff members who had access to the plane. Meanwhile, Mr. Anderson personally oversaw the repairs to his jet, ensuring that no trace of tampering remained. Ethan found himself unexpectedly drawn into the investigation. Despite his young age, his sharp eye for detail and first-hand observations made him an invaluable asset. Mr. Anderson invited him back to the airstrip multiple times, asking him to retrace his steps from the night he discovered the sabotage. Each visit filled Ethan with a mix of pride and unease. On one hand, he was thrilled to be taken seriously by adults. On the other, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into dangerous territory. One afternoon, as Ethan stood beside Mr. Anderson in the hangar, the millionaire turned to him with a serious expression. "I need your help," he said. "You've already proven you're observant. Can you think of anyone else who might have been acting suspiciously around here recently?" Ethan hesitated, recalling the countless hours he'd spent watching planes take off and land. He remembered seeing various workers, delivery personnel, and even strangers loitering near the airstrip at odd hours. But none of them stood out except for one face. "There was this guy," Ethan began slowly. "He came around a few times last week. I didn't think much of it at first because he wore a uniform, but now that I think about it, he wasn't doing any actual work. He just hung around." "Can you describe him?" Mr. Anderson asked, pulling out a notepad. Ethan closed his eyes, visualizing the man. He was tall, maybe in his 30s, with dark hair and a scar above his eyebrow. "Oh, and he drove a white van. It had a logo on the side, but I don't remember what it was." Mr. Anderson nodded thoughtfully. "Good. That's helpful." He signaled to one of his security guards, who jotted down the description and left to run background checks. As the investigation unfolded, the list of suspects grew longer. Among them were disgruntled former employees, jealous business rivals, and even individuals linked to organized crime syndicates. Mr. Anderson's wealth and success had earned him admiration, but also enemies. Some wanted revenge for perceived slights, while others sought to profit from his downfall. To complicate matters further, investigators uncovered evidence suggesting the sabotage was part of a larger conspiracy. Financial records revealed that someone had taken out a massive insurance policy on Mr. Anderson's life shortly before the incident. Whoever was behind the plot clearly intended to collect a hefty payout once the plane crashed, or so they thought. Despite these revelations, Ethan struggled to wrap his head around the idea that someone would go to such lengths to harm another person. It all felt surreal, like something out of a movie. Yet, the more he learned, the more determined he became to uncover the truth. One evening, as Ethan pored over photos of possible suspects provided by Mr. Anderson's team, he froze. One face looked eerily familiar, not from the airstrip, but from somewhere closer to home. His blood ran cold as realization dawned on him. It was Mr. Carter, a close family friend and frequent visitor to Ethan's house. Ethan's hands trembled as he stared at the photo of Mr. Carter. The man's face was unmistakable. The same warm smile that had greeted him countless times, the same laugh lines etched around his eyes. How could this be possible? Mr. Carter wasn't just a family friend. He was practically an uncle to Ethan. He taught him how to ride a bike, helped him build model airplanes, and even shared stories about his own dreams of flying when he was younger. But now, staring at the evidence in front of him, Ethan couldn't deny what he saw. It was Mr. Carter's face on the suspect list, along with notes detailing suspicious financial transactions and connections to underground networks. His mind raced, trying to reconcile the kind, generous man he knew with the cold-blooded saboteur investigators were describing. Unable to process his emotions, Ethan decided to confront Mr. Carter directly. That evening, he rode his bike to the older man's house, clutching the photo tightly in his pocket. When Mr. Carter opened the door, his expression lit up with genuine surprise. "Ethan, what brings you here?" he asked warmly, ushering the boy inside. "I haven't seen you in a while." For a moment, Ethan hesitated. The familiar scent of coffee and books filled the air, reminding him of all the afternoons he'd spent playing board games or tinkering with gadgets under Mr. Carter's guidance. But then he remembered the plane, the tampered wires, and the lives that had almost been lost. Taking a deep breath, he blurted out, "Did you do it?" Mr. Carter frowned, confused. "Do what, Ethan?" "The sabotage," Ethan said, his voice shaking. "Were you the one who messed with Mr. Anderson's plane?" The color drained from Mr. Carter's face. For a split second, he looked like a deer caught in headlights, but then his features hardened into something Ethan had never seen before: guilt. "I didn't want you to find out like this," Mr. Carter said quietly, sinking into a chair. Ethan's heart sank. "Why would you do something like that? You could have killed people." Mr. Carter sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. "It wasn't supposed to end like that. I never wanted anyone to get hurt. I needed the money." As he spoke, the full story began to unravel. Months earlier, Mr. Carter had fallen into debt after borrowing heavily from loan sharks to cover medical bills for his sick mother. Desperate and cornered, he agreed to a dangerous scheme orchestrated by the criminals. Sabotage Mr. Anderson's plane, fake his death, and collect the insurance payout. The plan seemed foolproof until Ethan intervened. "I thought I could fix things without anyone getting hurt," Mr. Carter admitted, his voice cracking with emotion. "But now everything's falling apart." Ethan felt a lump rise in his throat. Betrayal burned deep within him, mingling with sadness and anger. This man, whom he had trusted and admired, had betrayed not only Mr. Anderson but also Ethan himself. "What happens now?" Ethan whispered, tears welling up in his eyes. Mr. Carter looked away, unable to meet his gaze. "You have to tell them, Ethan. It's the right thing to do." Though every fiber of his being resisted the idea, Ethan knew Mr. Carter was right. With a heavy heart, he left the house and pedaled straight to Mr. Anderson's estate. By the time he arrived, his face was streaked with tears, but his resolve was firm. When Mr. Anderson heard the truth, he immediately contacted the authorities. Within hours, Mr. Carter was arrested, and investigators confirmed his involvement in the sabotage plot. Evidence showed that he had acted under pressure from the loan sharks, who had threatened harm to his family if he refused to cooperate. The revelation hit Ethan hard. He struggled to reconcile the betrayal with the memories he cherished. Nights were restless, filled with thoughts of what might have happened if he hadn't discovered the sabotage in time. Yet, amidst the turmoil, he found solace in knowing he had done the right thing, even when it meant losing someone he cared about. The days following Mr. Carter's arrest were a blur of emotions for Ethan. The weight of the betrayal lingered, but so did a sense of relief. Relief that the truth had come to light and that lives had been saved. Mr. Anderson, deeply moved by Ethan's courage and integrity, insisted on expressing his gratitude in a meaningful way. One afternoon, Ethan received an invitation to visit Mr. Anderson's office, a sleek, modern space overlooking the city skyline. When he arrived, Mr. Anderson greeted him with a warm smile and gestured for him to sit. "Ethan," Mr. Anderson began, leaning forward in his chair, "you've done something extraordinary. Not many people, regardless of age, would have had the courage to step forward like you did. You saved my life, and possibly the lives of everyone who would have been on that plane." Ethan shifted uncomfortably in his seat, unsure how to respond. "I just did what I thought was right," he mumbled. "And that's precisely why I want to do something for you," Mr. Anderson continued. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a folder, placing it gently on the table. Inside this folder is a full scholarship to the prestigious Skyward Aviation Academy. It's one of the best schools in the country for aspiring aerospace engineers. Ethan's eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely," Mr. Anderson replied with a grin. "You've shown incredible talent and determination. This is your chance to turn your passion into a career. Consider it my way of saying thank you for everything." Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes as he flipped through the documents. For years, he dreamed of attending such a school, but his family's financial situation made it seem impossible. Now, thanks to Mr. Anderson, those dreams were within reach. "I don't know what to say," Ethan stammered, his voice thick with emotion. "You don't need to say anything," Mr. Anderson said kindly. "Just promise me one thing. Keep chasing your dreams. The world needs more people like you. People who care enough to make a difference." Overwhelmed with gratitude, Ethan nodded. From that moment on, he threw himself into preparing for the academy, determined to honor Mr. Anderson's generosity. His parents were overjoyed, proud not only of his academic opportunity but also of the bravery he had shown during such a difficult time. As for Mr. Carter, the investigation revealed that he had been coerced into the sabotage plot under extreme duress. While his actions were undeniably criminal, the court took his circumstances into account, sentencing him to community service and mandatory counseling instead of prison. Though their relationship could never be the same, Ethan chose to forgive him, understanding that desperation had driven him to make terrible choices. In the months that followed, Ethan became a local hero of sorts. News of his role in uncovering the sabotage spread throughout the community, inspiring others with his story of courage and quick thinking. Teachers praised him, classmates looked up to him, and strangers thanked him for his selflessness. But perhaps the greatest reward came from within. Through the experience, Ethan learned invaluable lessons about trust, responsibility, and doing the right thing, even when it was hard. He realized that being brave didn't mean having no fear. It meant acting despite it. And while losing Mr. Carter's friendship hurt, Ethan knew he had grown stronger because of it. By the time he started at the Skyward Aviation Academy, Ethan felt ready to take on the world. Surrounded by like-minded peers and guided by expert instructors, he thrived in his studies, excelling in subjects like aerodynamics, engineering design, and flight mechanics. Every challenge he faced reminded him of the boy who once watched planes soar overhead, dreaming of the day he'd build them himself. Years passed, and Ethan grew into a brilliant young man, his childhood dreams now a reality. After graduating at the top of his class from the Skyward Aviation Academy, he went on to work for one of the most innovative aerospace companies in the world. His designs revolutionized the industry, earning him recognition as a pioneer in sustainable aviation technology. Planes inspired by his vision crisscrossed the skies, quieter, faster, and more efficient than ever before. Though his career soared to new heights, Ethan never forgot where it all began. On quiet evenings, he would sit by his office window, gazing at the planes taking off and landing in the distance. Each one reminded him of that fateful night when he'd risked everything to uncover the truth. It was a memory etched deeply into his heart, a reminder of the power of courage and the impact one person could make. Mr. Anderson remained a close mentor and friend throughout Ethan's journey. The millionaire continued to support young talents like Ethan, funding scholarships and programs aimed at inspiring the next generation of innovators. Their shared experience had forged a bond that transcended age and circumstance, proving that even the most unlikely connections could change lives forever. As for Mr. Carter, Ethan occasionally thought about him, wondering how life had treated him after their paths diverged. Though forgiveness hadn't come easily, Ethan eventually came to terms with what had happened, choosing to focus on the lessons he'd learned rather than dwell on the betrayal. One day, while attending an international aviation conference, Ethan found himself standing beside a prototype aircraft he had designed. As reporters snapped photos and admirers praised his work, he spotted a familiar figure in the crowd, Mr. Anderson. The millionaire gave him a proud nod, his eyes twinkling with pride. In that moment, Ethan realized how far he'd come, not just professionally, but personally. Looking back, he knew the road hadn't always been easy, but every challenge, every sacrifice, had led him here, to a place where his dreams took flight alongside the planes he loved so dearly. And as he watched another aircraft ascend gracefully into the sky, Ethan smiled, knowing he had finally fulfilled the promise he'd made to himself all those years ago, to reach for the stars and never look back.